In a stunning turn, China and India have announced a $1 trillion trade and investment pact, signaling a seismic shift in global power. This deal, unveiled on November 17, 2025, comes just months after the US imposed sweeping tariffs on Chinese goods, meant to weaken Beijing, but instead uniting Asia's two giants. The agreement goes far beyond trade. It includes joint industrial zones, technology transfers, and, crucially, a system to settle trade in yuan and rupees, directly challenging the US dollar's dominance. For decades, the world assumed China and India would remain rivals. Now, their partnership is rewriting the rules of global economics. The timing is no accident. India, reeling from the fallout of US tariffs, found in China not just a trading partner, but a lifeline. This is more than a reaction to American policy. It's a declaration of economic independence by the world's two most populous nations. The implications are profound. Global power is shifting, alliances are in flux, and Asia is rising as a new center of influence. The catalyst for this realignment? US tariffs. President Trump's administration slapped a 40% tariff on Chinese imports, aiming to force American companies to bring jobs home. But the global economy is a web, not a straight line. Indian manufacturers, deeply tied to Chinese supply chains, were collateral damage. The cost of Chinese components soared, making Indian exports to the US uncompetitive. Orders dried up, and India's exports to its biggest market plunged by 30%. The tariffs, meant to isolate China, instead crippled a key American ally. India's dream of becoming a manufacturing powerhouse was derailed, not by its own failings, but by a trade war between giants. The lesson was clear. In a world of interconnected supply chains, economic warfare is a blunt instrument. India's vulnerability to US policy became painfully obvious. This crisis forced New Delhi to consider options it had long avoided. The export collapse triggered a crisis across India. Factories and industrial hubs fell silent, and millions lost their jobs almost overnight. Small and medium businesses, the backbone of Indian manufacturing, defaulted on loans as revenues vanished, sparking a credit crunch. Inflation soared as supply chains broke down and the cost of imports rose. The government faced plummeting tax revenues and tough choices: cut spending or borrow more, risking a debt spiral. Public anger erupted in protests across major cities. The Make in India dream was in tatters, and confidence in the US partnership evaporated. India's economic indicators, exports, jobs, inflation, were all flashing red. In this moment of crisis, an unexpected offer arrived from an old adversary. China stepped in, not as a rival, but as a potential savior. Sensing opportunity, China launched a diplomatic offensive, framing itself as a fellow victim of US economic aggression. Beijing proposed a partnership. China would boost imports of Indian goods, pharmaceuticals, software, agriculture, offering Indian businesses a vast new market. The centerpiece, a yuan-rupee settlement system, bypassing the US dollar and insulating both economies from American financial pressure. Chinese banks extended low-interest credit to Indian firms, shifting supply chains toward China, injecting much-needed liquidity. This was more than economics. It was a strategic gambit to draw India into a new Asia-centric order. By helping India recover, China aimed to weaken US alliances and accelerate the rise of a regional economic bloc. The message was clear: Asia should set its own rules, free from Western dictates. For India, battered by crisis, the offer was too good to ignore. The seeds of a new alliance were sown. China was turning American pressure into a historic opportunity. The partnership quickly moved from talk to action. Joint industrial zones sprang up in India, fueled by Chinese investment and technology. Special economic zones in Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh became hubs for electronics, semiconductors, and green tech, pairing Chinese know-how with Indian labor. The yuan-rupee settlement system went live, letting Indian firms pay for Chinese imports directly in rupees, bypassing the dollar. Technology transfer accelerated. Chinese battery giants partnered with Indian automakers to build EV gigafactories, while 5G infrastructure projects took off. Trade surged, but this time it was balanced. Goods, capital, and technology flowed both ways. Thousands of laid-off Indian workers found new jobs in these zones. The Indian economy, once on the brink, began a rapid recovery. The trillion-dollar pact was no longer just a headline, it was reshaping Asia's economic landscape. A new axis of power was taking shape. Washington was stunned. The Trump administration, seeing its strategy backfire, doubled down, threatening more tariffs, this time targeting any nation aiding China, including India. US officials warned that punishing India would only drive it further into China's orbit, but the administration pressed on. The US launched a critical minerals independence initiative, scrambling to secure resources for next-gen tech outside Chinese influence. Diplomatic outreach to Africa and Latin America intensified, and incentives for domestic mining were rolled out. But these moves lagged behind the rapid progress in Asia. In India, US threats were seen as bullying, reinforcing the sense that America was an unreliable partner. While Washington drafted reports and legislation, the China-India Pact was already delivering results. The US was playing catch-up, trying to contain a new reality that was already unfolding. Meanwhile, China and India were building bridges, not walls. The China-India Pact is more than a trade deal. It's a blueprint for a new global order. The yuan rupee system challenges the US dollar's dominance, offering a model for others to follow and threatening the foundation of American economic power. The alliance shatters old assumptions. Economic interests now trump ideology and history. The world is moving from US unipolarity to a multipolar era, with shifting transactional alliances. At the heart of this competition, control over critical minerals, lithium, cobalt, rare earths, the building blocks of the future economy. By joining forces, China and India are consolidating their grip on these resources, outmaneuvering the US in the race for technological supremacy. The rivalry is now geological as much as geopolitical. American tariffs, meant to isolate China, have instead catalyzed a profound realignment. The era of uncontested US economic dominance is ending. The world is entering a new, complex age, where economics, technology, and resources will decide the winners and losers of the 21st century.